So, hi everyone, and welcome to this video on an introduction, a brief introduction to second degree price discrimination. So, in the past few videos, we've been dealing with examples and price discrimination, which fell under perfect price discrimination, in that the producer or the monopolist knows exactly the reservation price or the maximum willingness to pay of each of their individual consumers. But as we know, in most cases, it's not possible for the monopolist to know the reservation prices of the consumers. It's not really reasonable to believe that the monopolist has perfect knowledge about each and every one of their consumers. And therefore, they don't know the specific demand equation of each consumer. And therefore, they can't engage in that first degree price discrimination. So, as we said, first degree price discrimination will yield the monopolist the highest profit among all forms of price discrimination. But uh, that's very unreasonable to believe that the monopolist would know exactly what each person would be willing to pay for their good or service. However, uh, even if it can't do first degree price discrimination, the monopolist may possibly estimate the demand equation of an average of their consumers. So instead of, since it doesn't know each demand equation of each and every consumer, it can try and see, okay, maybe I can just estimate a sort of average figure and maybe I can use that as a basis. And what happens is, in this case, the monopolist can use second degree price discrimination, which can increase its profits more, not as much as a perfect price discrimination, but certainly higher than that of if the monopolist just charged a single price. And it does this mainly through two main things. The first one, which we'll discuss in the next few videos, is on two-part tariffs, and another one is on block pricing. And essentially, they function quite similarly. So let's discuss first our two-part tariffs. So, two-part tariffs are the most common form of second-degree price discrimination, and they're essentially a two-part pricing system which involve lump sum fees or like membership fees or something like that, and per unit fees or like unit costs. And I think when we say an example, you'll know what I mean. Um, in two-part tariffs, it's kind of similar to block pricing in that the average price per unit that you pay, or I'm sorry, that it costs to you, to a consumer, varies with the number of units you buy. Okay, so there is some sort of variation in terms of how much the per unit cost of a monopolist's good would be if you purchase in different amounts, right? And this two-part tariff system, it requires each consumer to pay a sort of lump sum fee, like a membership or a subscription fee. And essentially, we refer to this as the first tariff. So this lump sum fee, this is your first tariff. Okay, so this is the first sort of charge that will be there. And it's essentially for the right to buy as many units of the good as the consumer wants at a specified per unit fee of P. Okay, so the consumer will pay this one time or maybe a periodical lump sum fee, which is the first tariff, for the right to be able to use a particular good or resource, right? And because of this first tariff, okay, so we refer to P, by the way, as the second tariff. So this is the second tariff, okay, because it's two-part tariff. So the first tariff is the lump sum fee. The second is the specific unit fee. So because of this lump sum fee, a consumer pays more per unit if that consumer buys less of a good, because the lump sum fee is less spread out. So it's quite reasonable. It's like in bulk sales and in wholesale selling. Of course, the fee per unit is lower if you buy more units, right? Especially since the fixed cost, the distribution cost, and specific fees are more distributed across more units. So the cost per unit is dramatically decreased. And it's because of this lump sum fee that as a consumer may pay more per unit if the consumer buys a small amount than if they buy a large amount. So if a consumer buys a large amount, it will of course give the monopolist more profit, but it will give him or her a lower per unit fee as well. So we formulate the total tariff, which is the first tariff and plus the second tariff, as merely L, or the subscription or the lump sum fee, plus P times Q, which is essentially the price of the per unit good agreed upon once the consumer pays the lump sum price or periodically pays the lump sum fee, times the number of units that the consumer chooses to buy, which is Q. And if you, so that's T is equal to L plus P times Q. If you divide all of these by Q, okay, you, T over Q, that's equal to P bar. Okay, so we refer to that as the average price, and that's just equal to L over Q plus P. Okay, and that's the average price that a consumer will pay. So as you can see, okay, as you can see, the higher the quantity that the consumer chooses to purchase, so the higher the Q, the lower this fraction will end up being, and thus the lower the per unit fee. The per unit average price would be. And a typical example of this two-part tariff system are essentially car rental services. So for example, car rental services, sometimes what they do is they charge a fixed per day fee for you to be able to rent a car, and they charge you per kilometer. Okay, how much, since you rented the car, they charge you per kilometer based on the distance. So maybe the further you go, the more cost effective it is because you paid, say, a high fixed per day fee. So you may want to maximize that fully. Another example are club or resort fees. So for example, there are certain country clubs or resorts that have an annual membership fee, which you can pay periodically or which you can pay one time. And essentially, they also charge for their service. For example, if you want to have lunch or have a good buffet or use their facilities, they may charge you a price per visit, which probably has a lower price than if you just outright went there, because you would have needed to, one, subscribe to the annual membership fee or needed to pay the higher price. So those are examples of two-part tariff systems. Now, what will enable the monopolists to be able to do these two-part tariff systems? And what if there are requirements, what are they? So the main requirements are, first, the monopolist needs to be able to estimate how demand differs across consumers, or it needs to be able to differentiate with the quantity that a single average consumer buys. So it needs to have a good sense of how the market demand sort of operates and how consumer demand is. It might not know exactly each person's reservation price, but it needs to be able to estimate the average quite well. Another one, which is similar to first-degree price discrimination, is that the monopolist must prevent resales as well. So it must prevent this this sort of phenomenon as well, and that's something seen. So if you subscribe to resort fees, you need to have, say, an entry ID to be able to get in. So it's not easily resold as much as, say, other goods or services. And the problem for the firm is, if it chooses to engage in second-degree price discrimination, is that how does it set up the lump sum fee, or the first part of the tariff, versus the per unit price, or P? While trying, of course, since this is price discrimination, you want to get consumer surplus and turn it into profit, right? And if the firm has market power, okay, should it charge a high entry fee or a low usage fee, or should it charge a low entry fee and a high usage fee? So how should it structure the pricing system? Well, that varies per firm. So those are the key requirements and considerations under second-degree price discrimination. And in the next few videos, we'll tackle cases on identical consumers and differentiated consumers, and also deal more with block pricing. So thank you for your attention, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.